Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with another work in progress episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show where I try and catch up with all these drawings that I started in earlier episodes of the show. So we've been lucky. The last few weeks I've had guests and we've gotten back into the swing of doing regular interview style shows like we started off with and new drawings. But October, it's going to be a very busy month for me, and so I'm going to pop back and forth between the two, and I think there's actually going to be a week where there's no show. We'll see. More on that, I suppose, as that week approaches. Hello, Jojo. Love your content. Joining the stream, friends. Thank you. I'm not sure about that. Add me on Discord. I don't have a Discord. So yes, we're here today. I'm going to do another work in progress. I'm going to be working on doing the drawings on a past a sketch that I began on an earlier episode. And while I do that, I like to. I know Michael says, "What? No show?" Well, I'm undecided about whether I'm going to do no show or record a show and put it up, because I'm going to be in Madison, Wisconsin, in the middle of the month for Gamehole Con, and that will make it impossible for me to do a live show that week. So I'll be around. I'll be interacting with folks. Won't be online, and I won't be doing a show live. But maybe I'll do a recorded show. We'll see. No Discord. Well, I mean, I use Discord. I just don't have a Discord. Like, I don't have a Discord channel. Yeah. Too much bother. Too much bother for me. It's just another thing I'd have to take care of. So I use other people's Discords. Do a live show from Gamehole. I don't have the tech. I don't have the technology to do that. I'll be doing several shows at Gamehole Con. I don't think any of them will be live streamed, but that's up to Gamehole Con. Anyway, so this week we're going to be doing some drawings, and when I do that, I like to have old pal on to sit and chat with me, someone who has been a guest previously, and just kind of hang out, and we talk about games, and we talk about life, and we talk about all kinds of stuff. And thankfully, this week, once again, I'm going to have my buddy Dale Donovan join us, and he is right here. Hey, Dale, how's it going?
Good evening, sir. What do you mean, old?
Yeah, I know. It came out of my mouth. I'm like, oh, I'm going to pay for that.
No. I think I don't know, but I think we're close to the same age. I'm hoping you're a little bit older.
I think I'm a little older. So yeah, no, this is a young friend of mine. Hello, Carrie. Welcome and thank you. Well, I hope things are going well in Maryland. And say hi to the gang there for me. I will be. I'll be in the Baltimore area for a few days in January, Carrie. Maybe we can find some time to say hi when I'm there. But we'll talk about that as January gets closer, I guess. How are you doing, Dale? How is life treating you there in the Midwest?
Well, the weather has been completely summer-like. It's like it's October and it feels like June because it's 75 and sunny. The trees and the insects don't know what to do. The trees in front of my house, which of course are the last trees to get their leaves in the spring and the first to lose them in the fall, are rapidly shedding their leaves, but most of the other trees in the neighborhood up and down the street, they're not even turning yet. So they like I said, they think it's still summertime. So
we had, you having lived here in the Pacific Northwest, know that autumn's a weird thing, right? Sometimes we get summer for a while, and once it tends to just be gray. It's the start of the big gray. But we've had a bunch of summer-like days, followed by what looked like the start of the gray, followed by a couple more summer-like days, and today it was a very nice morning, and as I look out the window right now, it is gray and drizzly and windy. So autumn is really trying to arrive.
In my time out there, I noticed even in the spring and summer, you would very often get up in the morning and things would be kind of gray and kind of damp. But the time when, for example, you and I used to get up from our uh, desks at WotC and go get a drink at the drink station up there in the employee lounge,
Right.
it would very often be you'd look out the window and oh, the sun's come out. That's good. you know, and up there in the employee lounge with the barista station there is where you introduced me to one of my favorite beverages, chai tea.
Mmm. Chai's nice.
So I owe you for that, buddy.
I'm glad I can introduce that to your life. Life is better with chai. I
Yes,
thought you
it
were going to
is.
say an Italian soda because I introduced a lot of people to the concept of an Italian soda.
I think you kept that one from me.
Yeah.
You kept it for yourself. You didn't want to share.
Well, you were too busy enjoying the chai.
That's true. I was overcome by the chai.
All right. Well, let me, since we're just going to be doing the chatting anyway, let me pull over here. I'm going to be working on this here drawing of cartoon homage to the Fantasy Age Core Rulebook, second edition.
I was going
Uh,
to say, I believe this was the cover of the second edition book, right? Because if I
yes,
remember correctly, and I certainly could be wrong, but I believe this age system initially appeared in Green Ronin's Dragon Age
it
table,
did. Yeah,
the
this is the
tabletop
core.
version of the Dragon Age computer games.
Yes, you are 100% correct. Yes, this basic system was first created for their licensed Dragon Age RPG, and they liked it so much that they pulled it out and made it its own game. And now it exists both as Fantasy Age, Age standing for the Adventure Game Engine.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to find that in my memory palace, and it was not working.
Yeah,
So,
the other day I still go to the Green Ronin has a Thursday live stream show in the afternoon called
mhm.
Thursdage, all about the age system and various things associated with it. And I was talking about it last week, and I could not remember what the AGE stood for. I think Michael here in chat very kindly typed it for me.
Mhm. Michael in chat says one of us you're back but very stuttery. Oh, it says okay now. All right. So apparently it resolved itself. Okay.
Okay, back but very steady. Okay.
Yeah. And he says it's okay. It's okay now. So whatever the audio issue there may have been, it's it seems to have resolved itself now. So if anybody else has any other issues, please point it out to us. I'm not sure what we can do about it, but
Yeah.
we would like to know.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I have done after having troubles again a few weeks ago is now on Wednesdays before the show, I restart my machine. I turn it off and restart it to just clear out
Mhm.
any of the wonky
Any
memory.
lingering detritus or detritus?
All right, so yes, this is what I've got sketch wise so far.
Mhm.
Uh, actually this is I went and worked on this after the last show. It's a little more in depth on the sketching, but I'm going to start turning layers off and doing.
Is that a Wayne Reynolds cover,
This is
Stan?
a
It looks
Wayne
like.
Reynolds cover, yes.
Yep. Lots of Wayne Reynolds art was moving through the building when you and I were working there. 20 something years ago now. It does
A
not seem
long
like
time
that.
ago.
Yep. But yeah, we were very fortunate in getting Wayne to do a lot of our third edition and 3.5 art.
I was talking to someone the other day, and I was misremembering that Wayne Reynolds. I knew one of the artists had their name left out of the credits on the 3E core rule books
Mm.
repeatedly. Like the player's handbook came out and it accidentally got left off, and the art directors, I remember talking to Don Murin about it at the time, uh, were very apologetic and said, we'll give you some extra work and we'll make sure it's right the next time. And then the next core book came out and the name had been left out again. And I remember
Oh.
it happened over the course of three books in a row. And he had plenty of stuff in the book, but just kept getting his credit removed. Um, and I
And
thought it
I
was Wayne
suppose.
Reynolds, but it wasn't. It was Arnie Schweikel.
Oh, okay. Whoever it was, that was a very unfortunate circumstance. But once the first one gets missed, it's almost slightly more understandable to see that it might subsequently get missed too, because very often
Yeah,
you're comparing the second core book com, to the first core book as a template, and if something gets
yep,
left out of the template the first time,
yeah.
it's more likely that it's going to continue to be left out.
Right.
So,
It's the same artist. Let's just lift
mm,
lift and repeat. So though I remember uh, asking her about that later on, and she said that yeah, she felt terrible about it. But Arnie said he felt pretty good because he got a lot of extra work. His stuff was
sure.
still there, and he got a lot
Yes,
of work
always.
out of that. And he might not have gotten. And she said, "No, we love you, Arnie." He said, "Yeah, you got a lot of people you love."
Yeah, yeah. Do you though? Really? Yeah. And of course, all that art, I'm sure immediately went into his portfolio and
Yeah,
said, "Here, look." He could have also, walked around with a stack of books, but those get heavy after a while. So,
I did the core books for D&D. Your name's not in there, no, but that's my art, isn't it?
yeah. Here's some of my other art. Look at this art. You can see it's the same. So, yeah, it was unfortunate that happened, but it was good that he didn't worry too much about it. He appreciated the work, and of course, Dawn would feel terrible about such a thing happening
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
because nobody wants that
No,
to
Dawn.
happen.
I mean, besides just being an awesome person, Dawn fought
Yes,
really hard for her artists.
yeah, oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. She was a stalwart defender of all the people that worked for her, that freelanced for her, that she contracted for. There was one instance where it didn't work out. It wasn't Dawn's fault in any way, shape, or form. The artist in question and our schedules just couldn't quite mesh. This was a WotC story,
Mm.
and if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and tell that story right
Go ahead.
now. The team I was on at the time included Ravenloft, and this was, as I said, this was the third edition era, and one of the things that the group was doing was collating and combining the all the various Van Richten's guides into collections, essentially. Um, it was a These were going
This
to
is
be
second
digest.
edition. This is second edition stuff.
Second edition? I'm sorry. Did I say
You
third?
said third edition.
My apologies. After a while, the editions kind of blend together.
You think?
Mhm. Okay, so this was late second edition. Okay. Yes, I remember that now. Yeah, because Steve Miller was working on them too. Right. Yes. So this was second edition. In any case, we were in a product meeting and we were tossing around ideas. Of course, the early Ravenloft products. We're very fortunate in the fact that we had Stephen Fabian doing a lot of the interior art for those. And the idea was brought up that, well, yeah, we have this wonderful Fabian art, but the customers, the gamers, have seen this before. Yes, Michael, you did see that, and then that is true, and that is something we will talk about. Kim Mohan's induction into the Museum
Oh,
of Pop Culture,
yeah,
Science
yeah,
Fiction, and
that's big
Fantasy
news.
Hall
We
of Fame.
definitely should talk about that.
We will, as soon as I wrap this story up, we will talk about that. Anyway, in this meeting, we were thinking, well, we have this wonderful Fabian art. People have seen that before. Who should we get? What should we do? And this is, blue sky. Let's shoot for the moon. And someone, I don't,
Can I just insert here something that
yes,
I don't know whether you were not aware of or were somehow leaving out on purpose, but I feel should go in. Is it's not just that people had seen the Fabian art; it's that because of a contracting error, we were not allowed to. TSR bought all rights for just about all the art, but they
correct.
didn't get all rights for the Fabian art, so they couldn't
Ah,
use it.
okay. Either I didn't know that or I had forgotten it.
Yeah.
So, in any case, we needed a new artist. And I guess this was blue sky thinking, let's shoot for the moon. Someone said comic book artist Bernie Wrightson. Let's see if we can get him. Does anyone know how to get in contact with Bernie Wrightson? No one did, but for some reason, people in the meeting turned to me and said, Dale, you're kind of a comic book guy. Can you find out how to get in touch with Bernie Wrightson? Sure, I'll give it a shot. So I left the meeting tasked with that, and it really didn't require through no great wisdom of my own or anything. At the time, there was a gaming industry mailing list, an email list called the Weasel List, WZL list, and this had started in the very early days of the internet. This was a private group, and you had to be in. Someone had to nominate you for you to get on this list, and it was an industry list. People talked about insider stuff, not the secrets or anything, but just, hey, our printer just raised prices. Does anybody have any printers? Hey, does anybody know how to work this technology? We want to invest in this. Is that a good idea? Who uses this software? And it was also just talking about the general business of being in the gaming industry. So one of the first things I did was went back to my desk and I sat down and I wrote out an entry and posted it to the Weasel List, explaining everything I just explained to you and the chat.
Okay.
If there's anyone who knows Mr. Wrightson or who knows anyone who knows Mr. Wrightson, I give my permission to go ahead and, forward this email to the person and tell them they can forward it to Mr. Wrightson's people or whatever. Please pass this along if you can, because I didn't really know what else to do.
Right.
So I did that, and other things came up. A period of time passed that I do not recall the length of. But I'm sitting at work at my desk one day, and my phone rings. Now we all worked together in the same area of the same building, so and we would just get up and talk to each other. So I knew that my phone ringing was probably not anyone in the building. This was probably coming from outside. So cleared my throat a little bit. And said, yeah, this is Dale Donovan. And to my complete and utter slack-jawed flabbergastedness, the voice at the other end of the line said, "Oh, hi, Dale. This is Bernie Wrights, and I understand you wanting to talk to me." I don't know if that came out, but that's what my brain was doing. I thanked him very much for getting in contact with me. I kind of briefly recreated the email, restated what it was.
Right.
This is what I don't know if you know about the game or the publisher, but this is our gothic fantasy line. We worked with Stephen Fabian in the past, and your name was brought up, and if you'd like, if you'd be willing to share a mailing address, I can box up some stuff so you can see the kind of thing it is, so on and so forth. I'm the editor on this collation project. I'm not the art director, so I can't talk rates or contracts or anything with you. But if you have any general questions, right now, I'd be happy to answer them. And then I'll pass you on to our art director, Dawn Murin, and hopefully you guys will be able to, work something out, because everyone here is a big fan of yours, Mr. Wrights, and if it works out, that would make us all very happy here. And he was very, very kind and very polite, very professional. He gave me an address, and I, after the phone call, when it boxed up a bunch of Ravenloft stuff, sent it off to him. Transferred him up to Dawn, and again, for a period of time, I didn't hear anything, because, of course, that's her bailiwick. I'm not going to impose myself there or anything.
Right.
But sometime later, because I was working on this project, was a collation of 3 of the Van Richten's guides. I don't remember. Well, they're on the shelf behind me, but I won't go get them now, because you couldn't see them anyway. So I was working on this for a period of time.
Until you're going to turn on your camera, don't bother getting them.
Exactly. And but at some point, I had cause to interact with Dawn, and I asked her, and she said, "Oh yes, he was so nice, but we just couldn't." And he was, of course, so busy, he just couldn't work us into his schedule in the time frame that we needed it turned around for. And I said, "Oh well, yeah, well, that's too bad, Dawn. I know you did your best, and if you could have gotten him, you would have. But thanks very much for trying. I'm honestly astonished, that he actually, not that he wanted to work with us, but that he contacted me. He called me on the phone. It's like the most famous person who ever called me on the phone." So obviously that made quite an impression, such the fact that now, over 20 years later, I'm still telling you the story. But we came close to those collected Van Richten guides.
That would have been sweet if we could have gotten
having some Bernie Wrightson art in there, yes. And for those of people who may not know the name Bernie Wrightson, why don't you talk, if you're willing, for a minute or two, Stan, talk about Mr. Wrightson and some of his comic work.
Wrightson's super famous for a lot of. He began work back in the EC horror days, and was he an assistant to Frazetta? Or he knew Frazetta. He was in the same spiel, the same era. But he's probably most famous for being one of the co-creators of Swamp Thing, the DC character Swamp Thing. But
was that with Alan Moore, or was Alan Moore later?
No, Alan Moore was later. I think it was Len Wein.
Len Wein. See, I say all these names wrong. Thank you for correcting me on all these
That one I'm pretty sure is correct.
Yes, you're right. Alan Moore became famous for his run on Swamp Thing that he did.
No, Swamp Thing had come and gone in the early 70s or early to mid 70s, and Alan Moore was the writer that reinvigorated it and created the modern, very popular, what became the most popular versions. But Wrightson's stuff looked like something out of an EC comic. It was really, really creepy for a comic pun there for those who would get it. Um,
But I'm ching.
he's also
I
done
still have some
stuff
issues of
like
Creepy in the back room. So
he's also done stuff like when uh, Stephen King did Creep Show. Uh,
mhm.
he did the comic. Um, he did a graphic novel uh, adaptation for it, and he did all the art for that. And I think the art
So
in
didn't
the
he do the
movie
art in
itself is also his.
the intros and outros? Didn't he do for the individual
I
stories in the
think
film?
so.
Didn't
I
he do
think
that
so.
art as well?
Yeah, I think that was
That's my
part of what they wound up publishing that as a book. But I mean, one of the things that he's had that's the most lasting. I don't know that he would have said that it was his. I know that he was super proud of it. It was a thing that he had always wanted to do. Was he did these just incredibly gorgeous pen and ink uh, drawings for Frankenstein.
Oh
And
yes, Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein.
yeah. Oh,
Yes.
I mean, just
Oh
beautiful. This incredible hand uh, cross hatched thing
yes.
that is. Just look up Bernie Wrightson and Frankenstein and look at what some of those uh, um, pieces look like. It is just insane.
Mm, yes, the amount of work that that technique requires boggles me, a non-artist's mind. But then a lot about the visual arts boggle my tiny little mind. Um, what else do we want to say about Mr. Wrightson before we perhaps move on and talk about Mr. Mohan?
um, I don't know what we want to say. Just he's a legend in the industry. Everyone respected him. He died just a few years ago. Um, I got to meet him a couple of times at conventions. Uh, like so many people who get famous for doing creepy stuff, he was just an amazingly nice, ordinary guy to meet and talk to.
Yes,
Um,
you've made that point before that it's very often odd how what the art, whether it's visual art or other kinds of art, someone gets famous for a particular type or genre of art, and their person seems very at odds with to you produce that, you know.
I expected you to be crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, I mean, one of the things that I find um, I was going to say funny, but that seems a little insulting. Interesting about your story is, for so many people, you and I fill that same role for them. It's just like I got to talk to Bernie Wrightson, right? it's and and I certainly felt that way when I got to meet him. But it all depends on where your fandom lies and who you're working next to, right? You and I, uh, uh, well, no. Here's my version of that. When I was working at Upper Deck, we started a project, and I was in this meeting, and someone said, "You know what we should do is we should do game fiction for this. We do some short stories, game fiction." And and people are like, "What? Like that? Yeah, oh, yeah. What we should do, we should get someone like Jeff Grubb. That would be great. Get someone like Jeff Grubb." And I happened to know, Jeff Grubb, friend of mine, and I knew he was between jobs at the moment. The studio he'd been working for closed. And so I said, how about we just get Jeff Grubb? And he said, "Well, how are we going to get Jeff Grubb?" And I pulled out my cell phone and I called Jeff.
Wow.
Yeah,
Power move, Stan. Power move.
but for you or me, it's like, yeah, well, I'll give Jeff a call. Maybe he wants to do it.
Yeah.
But for them,
And
it was
just
like, you what? What we can do? And suddenly he was on the phone, like, Mr. Grubb, we want to talk to you about. And like, he's like, yeah, well, figure out what you want and have Stan give me a call, and maybe we'll do something. Right? It turned out to be a pretty power move. I didn't really intend it that way. When I pulled the phone out, I thought I was just being helpful, but yeah, it
Mhm.
worked out in my favor.
that is one thing I am going to say. Uh, that was a Cleavon Little moment for you, Stan. Excuse me while I whip this out,
Right?
and you take out your phone and just call Jeff
And
Grubb.
someone faints.
Yeah, you're right though. There are people who treat us with a reverence that we
That
perhaps
we find unusual. We
that
find
we find
incongruous.
yes that we find unusual. Yes, initially disconcerting. Um, I remember I have signed autographs for people, and I did so happily and would continue to do so if anyone would ask. But no one's asked me in quite some time for an autograph. But I remember, and will probably always remember the first time someone asked me for an autograph. I was at a I was at the Origins convention, summer of 1990. Jim Ward took the new kids down to Origins that year because it was Origins traveled around the country that at that time. It was in different cities, different moved through
It's now in
Columbus.
Columbus every year. Yeah,
Yes, but it was in Baltimore. It was in Atlanta. It was in that year. It was in Atlanta, and it was a co-convention with Dragon Con. And Jim Ward decided to take the new kids at the companies. So he brought myself, Bill Connors, Tim Brown down to Origins, and great fun. If, the first time I had been to a non-Gen Con convention, and that was an interesting one to be to because Dragon Con that was alongside Origin. Dragon Con is a different kind of convention from Gen Con or a standalone Origins. So that was very entertaining. But
I bet.
I was on a TSR I was on a TSR panel with Mr. Ward, and after it ended, we thanked the people who had come, and a few people were talking with us, asking us questions as we were leaving the room, going to wherever it was we were going. Jim and I were walking together, and someone came up to Jim, and I don't know if it was with a program booklet or if it was a TSR product, and asked him to autograph it. I thought, oh, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That is Jim Ward. And then the person turned to me and asked me to autograph the same thing. And I like to think I played it cool and acted professional, and maybe I did, but it was like, this person is asking me for my
My
autograph.
autograph. Are you sure?
Oh, yeah. But, oh, yeah, of course. And I signed my name, and he said thank you, and I said thank you. Because, of course, I was just mimicking what Ward had done, because, he signed a lot of autographs. He knows what he's doing. I'm just going to do what he did. But yeah, that is an interesting side effect, an interesting collateral. I don't want to say damage because it's not damage
Right.
at all, but little bit of collateral for people who work in a creative profession, such as we did, and who got credits. We were talking about credits before.
Yeah.
I had always been a credits reader of all the game products, and Dragon Magazine because I was a subscriber from like issue. I think my subscription started with issue 52, but that was an odd number. So I went out and found issues of, excuse me, copies of issues 51 and 50 because I wanted my collection to start at a nice round number. So what that tells you about my personality, I don't know.
Just
But I had
enough.
always been exactly. But I had always been a credits reader. So when I got the job and got in the building and started having lunch in the games library with peoples whose names I had read in the credits of my TSR gaming products for years, I was more than a little bit intimidated because I was sitting in the room with Jeff Grubb, John Pickens, Steve Winter, Zeb Cook, yeah, and and everyone else who had been there for as long. Even in the other departments, they didn't always come and have lunch with us, but Dave Sutherland and Dennis Kauth and
Yeah.
Clyde Caldwell and Jeff Easley in the art room, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. It's awesome, but it's kind of weird. And like I said, it was a little while before that intimidation wore off, and it wore off differently with different people. I think one of the first friends I made there, in the games library at lunchtime, it was Steve Winter, of course, because he's so gregarious, he's so funny, he's so open, such a great storyteller. You can't be around Steve Winter for like more than 15 minutes without going, "Oh, he's my friend," because he's just such a like funny, gregarious, open, kind person with the worst dice luck I've ever seen.
It's true.
Yes, it is. And I think through no fault of his own, I think the
Just
person I was most intimidated by for the longest was Zeb, because he was quiet, at
was
least in
who?
the Zeb.
Oh, Zev. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, David Zeb Cook, because he would come in the games library and he'd have his lunch and he'd have his newspaper when newspapers were a thing, and he'd sit down and he'd start eating his lunch, and and he'd snap open his newspaper and he'd read the newspaper while he was eating his lunch, and it's like, well, that's Zeb Cook sitting right there, and I could like ask him 400 questions, but he's eating his lunch and he's reading a paper. I'm not going to interrupt him while he's reading a paper, you know. But at some point, I I overcame my intimidation. It was nothing that Zeb ever said or did that fostered that. I was just, that's Zeb Cook, architect of second edition, with other people, of course, Steve Winter and many other people. But this was Zeb Cook. And I think one of the moments that really, broke that down for me, uh, Avalon Hill had released a new game called Republic of Rome, and it was quite complicated, but it really looked like fun. And Zeb had bought a copy, and he was teaching us how to play it over a series of lunches, because it was a long game. You couldn't play a whole game of that in a lunch hour or anything. And taught us the basics, and then as the game evolved, he would teach us, okay, here's now the game is coming to this phase, so I will now teach you the rules that'll get you through this next phase, which is a brilliant way to do it. But of course, he was the only one who knew the game and perhaps had played it before. So perhaps unsurprisingly, he was winning this game, which of course, being a bunch of gamers, we're independent of who we were or where we worked. It's like, this guy's teaching us the game, but he's also winning the game,
Yeah.
you know, and he has knowledge we don't. So let's, there was
Let's
a lot of
beat him.
there was a lot of table talk there about, okay, Zeb is running away with this game, and we know it's a learning game and it's not that big a deal, but we just really don't want him to run away with the game if we can somehow prevent it. There's that competitive spirit there, that I think is present in every gamer to some degree. Uh, so we tried to figure out, okay, well, how can we, sort of catch up to Zeb and because we had an incomplete knowledge of the rules, we were just discussing things openly, at the table while we're playing the game. Oh, could we do this? Could we do this? And I don't remember what it was, but somebody had a great idea. It might have been John Pickens. He had a great idea on how we thought we could level this playing field for the rest of this game of Republic of Rome with Zeb Cook sort of orchestrating it all. And so we put together a plan right there, and Zeb is sitting there listening to us. And so we get this plan put together. We're ready to enact it. And so the first person, in our little cabal was going to take his first turn for our master plan to bring down Zeb. And it was at that point that Zeb looked at us and said, "Oh yeah, you can't do that." So he had let us go for maybe it was a couple of minutes, but it seemed like a 10 or 15 minute strategy session on how we were going to bring down the tyrant. And he didn't say a word. He let us go. Detailing every step. You're to do this, I'll do this, then I'll do this. I got this card. You go over here. We'll screw it. We'll screw up his plan over here. And we're about to put it in action. He goes, "Yeah, no, you can't do that. That's against the rules." And at that point, I was like, okay, he's been toying with us this entire time. And whatever last vestige I may have had of being intimidated by him, I was like, no, he's screwing with us. That's kind of awesome. So at that point, I no longer felt intimidated by the David Zeb Cook.
That's an awesome story.
Hello, Surreptitious. Nice to see you. Should we talk about Mr. Mohan?
Sure.
Did you want to say anything, or do you want me to go?
Kim Mohan, I mean, he is one of the most, rightfully so, one of the most respected editors and people who worked on D&D in various capacities that I've ever come across, and he was just inducted into the science fiction at the Science Fiction and Pop Culture Museum. They've got a Sci-Fi Hall of Fame, and he was just inducted this week or a couple of weeks ago. It was just announced this week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of us. I remember it came up in the spring that they had open voting, and our friend Sue Wineline brought up. I think that's where I heard it from first. That
she was working with Kim's widow, Pamela Mohan, to make this happen, because Sue worked very closely with Kim on his second stint, I believe it was his second stint, of editing the seminal science fiction magazine Amazing Stories, a job that I applied for and didn't get. Sue got that job, but I'm not bitter.
Well,
I got to work with Kim again later in a subsequent circumstance, but yeah, it was Sue and I for associate editor on Amazing Stories under Kim, and understandably, Sue Wineline got the job. So,
you know what? I think both of us, and probably many of our friends, have similar stories of times that we didn't get the job, but look who they picked, right? How can you argue with that? I sure wanted that job, and I would have done a great job.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with that choice.
No, certainly not. there was a period of time uh, around the time when I was hired where there was a period there was a series of people, and I was one of them. The series didn't start and it did not end with me, but I was one of the series of people who came in for an interview at TSR for a particular position and ended up not getting it that time.
Mm. That's certainly my story.
Right? Yeah, you've told that story. Yes. Yeah, so very briefly, if I can tell this story briefly, um, I came in the
You
first
can
time. I,
tell the story. I don't know if you can do it briefly.
yes, yes, yes. That is the question. The first time I interviewed for the assistant editor at Dragon Magazine, I did not get the job, and Brown got the job.
Mm.
The
Hard to
second
argue for
time,
that.
exactly. The second time I interviewed for the assistant editor position at Dragon, I got the job. Stephen Shend had interviewed and not gotten it. Stephen's second interview, second audition, so to speak, not with the magazines this time, but in the game department, he got. And I know there was someone who subsequently joined the company who didn't get the job because Stephen got that job. But anyway, so that was a weird, sort of thing there. But that was a digression, and I believe it was a brief digression.
All right, but what do you want to say about Kim?
Okay. Well, as you were saying, Kim was one of the most respected people to ever work in the industry, and he goes back to, I believe, 1979. So that's TSR itself is, and the game is only, well, TSR is probably a little bit older than that, but D&D is only 5 years old at that time. And so this was very much in the depth of the Gygax era at TSR. And if you worked at TSR in that era, you worked with Gary Gygax pretty closely, and they worked very closely together. They got to be good friends. Kim eventually settled in as the Dragon magazine editor after Tim Kask left. Um, Kim was the editor of the magazine when I discovered D&D and started it being my uh, hobby, and later vocation, passion, obsession, whatever. Uh, the first issues of Dragon magazine that I read, Kim was the editor on. Years later, the very first thing I ever did for the game department, I had been at TSR for a few months on on the magazine staff working with Roger Moore and Barbara Young on Dungeon Adventures. Kim was putting together the Buck Rogers 25C role playing box set because role playing games came in box sets back then, and it was almost done. But Kim needed sets of eyes to proof these things, and Roger very kindly volunteered me and said, "Dale, you want to look at this game product for Kim Mohan?" Of course, I knew that name because, as I said earlier, I read all the credits. It was like the 32-page, you know, equipment book. So I proofread that for him, and didn't really know him, didn't really talk to him. He was like, here you go, Kim. Thanks for letting me look at this. You have any questions? You can't read my handwriting. Let me know. And that was it. Years later, still at TSR, still on the staff with Dragon, Roger, who had been editing the magazine and running the department, wanted to move over to the game side. So I took over running Dragon Magazine, and Kim, who had left the company and subsequently came back, was put in charge of the periodicals department. He was also editing Amazing Stories at that time, taking over from its former editor, Pat Price, who I got to know a little bit because he would come in periodically. He didn't work in the office full time, he worked from home, producing the old Amazing Stories when this was the small digest
Mm.
size. Kim took over from Pat, and so Kim had his staff with Amazing Stories and managed the department. Now, when I first found out he was coming back to manage the department, I was I didn't know him very well, and I wasn't sure exactly how we were going to get along. This is a former editor of Dragon magazine. He clearly knew how to run that magazine, almost certainly better than I did at the time. What was he going to do? Was he going to come in and try to run the magazine again, or what? I had no idea. All all I knew was like, all right, this is Kim, and over time I got to know him. He was nothing but supportive. He never got in my way. He never offered advice when it wasn't asked for, and I asked for it often because, again, he's Kim Mohan. I'm going to ask his
Yeah,
advice on things.
you'd be a fool not to.
Exactly. So, in endeavoring not to be a fool, I leaned on him heavily for a lot of stuff too, just beyond the technical production of a magazine. There were um, some issues going on with the company, with elements of the company at the time, because someone from the outside who had been brought in and put in charge of some departments of the company, including the periodicals department, not solely the periodicals department, above Kim, and very much at the executive level. And this person's style didn't mesh with what a lot of us were accustomed to. And so that created
Ripples?
issues that weren't related to actually producing any magazines or anything. And I leaned on Kim for advice in those situations too, and never steered me wrong. Let me do my thing with the magazine, and offered me nothing but support, indirectly and directly, when some of these not directly related to work issues came up from time to time. Uh, those issues eventually resolved themselves when Kim and I both left the periodicals department. It was not in We did not intend to both leave the periodicals department, but I had been there for over 5 years, and I was doing a lot of freelancing for the game side. And Tim Brown was running the department. This was after Jim Ward had left the company for a time. And I said, "Hey Tim, he's one of my best friends. I'm thinking, 5 years at Dragon, maybe I want to do something else. And I'm doing freelance stuff. And if you think it's good enough, can I come over and work in the games department?" And it took a while, but eventually that happened. So Kim and I parted ways again, but I valued all of our interactions very highly. Out at Wizards, after a while there, they adopted a new working model, more like some of the publishing houses in New York City, as it was explained to me anyway. You had your designers, you you had your editors, and what a, a new element was introduced that was uh, called managing editors or coordinating editors or something that is, and it changed the workflow from the editor of the project gets the book from the designer and takes it all the way through to typesetting. What happened with the managing editor paradigm was the editor finished his or her editing, got the manuscript ready to go to layout and printing, and then one of the managing editors took it over and walked it the rest of the way through layout, through production, and out the door to the printer. Kim was made the managing editor because, again, he's Kim Mohan. He has all this experience and knowledge. I was lucky enough to become the coordinating editor, his assistant, his the rest of the department. He was the boss. He was management. I was staff. Now we had a wonderful relationship from working together previously, and so I relished this opportunity and took every advantage of it. And I think it was in that time too that he and I really got to be friends, because we were the only two doing this job in the department, and
Mm-hmm.
it was something new, and not everybody got it. And so it was very often the two of us having to explain, well, that's not how. This is how we do this now. And again, nothing but support. And I learned more from. I did that job for about a year and a half. I learned more about editing in that year and a half from Kim than I had in my entire career before, and almost certainly since. Uh, the Kim Mohan was the finest technical editor I ever worked with.
Amen.
And this was after and then this was during the time after the corporate buyout, the Hasbro buyout. So we were all working for Hasbro. We were Hasbroids at the time. And after a period of a beautiful couple of years, Hasbro decided we were spending too much money. And there were a series of layoffs that happened over the course of a couple of years. As I recall, there were 6 major layoffs in that era from like 2000 to 2002, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, I made it to the 5th of those 6 major layoffs, but I didn't make it through to number 6 because, and I felt terrible for many reasons at the time. In the morning, Kim had to call me into his office, close the door behind me, and fire me.
Mm,
Now, I know a lot of managers had to do that a lot in that era. It certainly wasn't fun being on the receiving end of it, but I certainly didn't blame Kim or anybody in the department. They were just acting on directives from above,
yeah, those were no
and
fun.
and it wasn't until later they're talking to some other people like our friend Thomas Reed, who was in a position very similar to Kim's that day. He had to call some of his best friends in the world into his office and tell them they didn't have a job anymore. And so, don't envy anyone. You know, that is not something I've ever had to do in my career, and I hope I don't ever have to do it. But years later, I found out through uh, some mutual friends that I left the company, and once you're kind of out of the company, you're kind of out of the cliques to some
Yep.
degree. Whether that's good or bad, that's not for me to say at this time.
It's
That's
just, I
just
mean, it's just how it is, right? You, it's if you're there are two. I mean, there's two aspects to it, right? One is you're physically not there, so you don't get the things wafting into your hearing range, and then there's
Mhm.
also, to an extent, well, you're no longer now you're an outsider, and we can't tell outsiders things, even though
Right.
you're our friend.
Hmm.
You're not in the company
Yeah.
anymore.
Right. And it was especially interesting for me because my wife was still an employee of the company, even though I wasn't. But those are stories for another time. Um,
See, Michael
but,
asked
but,
where Kim came from
oh yes, go ahead.
before TSR.
He came from newspapers. He was he came from a journalism background. I think he was a sports writer and a sports editor. There's a biography of Kim up on the Museum of Pop Culture website, Fantasy and Science Fiction Wings Hall of Fame. That's a terrible way to express that, because that's not at
Hmm.
all what the URL or anything looks like. But it's museumofpopculture.com. There's a science fiction and fantasy wing, and within that wing, within that branch of the museum, there is a Hall of Fame with about 100 people in it. You've got David Gerald, Larry Niven, Stephen King, things like that. And Kim Mohan is now a member of that. But I'll get back to that in a second. I had heard.
By the way, Dale, you have failed to tell this story short.
No, I never said this story was going to be brief. I never said this story was going to be brief. Pay attention, Stan. Come on, what are you doing? Art or something?
I don't know. Get some people to go back and reread the transcript.
Okay. That's fine.
Go ahead.
I found out through mutual friends that Kim was perhaps concerned, about how I may have viewed him after the fact that he was my boss and he had to let me go. It bothered him to the point that years after this occurrence had happened, it was still on his mind, which speaks so well of the kind of person he was, not just as a professional, but as a person. Because like I said, I believe he and I were pretty good friends by that time. So a mutual friend expressed this to me, and at a subsequent GaryCon TSR reunion, Kim came to a couple of those, and one year I was able to kind of get him by himself for a couple of minutes, share a drink with him, and did my best to let him know in how high a regard I held him in.
Well, that's good.
Yes, I wanted to make sure that he understood that. And I introduced him to a few friends of mine who weren't in the industry or hadn't been in the industry, and I introduced him, and so that was all very cool. And I hope I put his mind at ease. The reason we're talking about all this now is because Kim passed away a few years ago, and his widow Pamela and Sue Weinlein organized this drive essentially to get Kim nominated for the Museum of Pop Culture's Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame by writing him in. It was a write-in campaign. You could go online to the museum's website and vote for some of these people and vote to nominate some of these people. And there was also a write-in section. So those two ladies, using the power of the internet and their social capital, mounted a campaign.
Managed to get word out to all of Kim's friends who were legion.
Yes. Friends, co-workers, colleagues, admirers of all sorts, and got him on the nomination form, and then launched a campaign to get him in the Hall of Fame. And I believe it was earlier this week, or perhaps late last week, that Pam Mohan announced that her and Sue Weinlein's efforts had paid off. And Kim Mohan, game designer for Dungeons and Dragons and editor of Amazing Stories magazine, the first science fiction magazine ever, and editing it more than once, has now taken his place in that Hall of Fame. So it made us all very happy that he received this recognition. Absolutely deserved. And so thankful to Pam and Sue that they masterminded this and got this done for Kim.
Yeah, and it's one of the things, like Kim, as you were saying, right? Kim was the editor for Amazing Stories for most of the '90s, and he'd done a lot of work throughout his career, in not just in gaming, but throughout science fiction, and it's kind of because of the fact that gaming has always been uh, the redheaded stepchild of the fantasy. It's just not taken seriously by the people that do awards or set up uh, uh,
Mm.
museums, other things like that. And so Kim Kim probably should have been nominated and for that and several other things many times over in the years as they've been
Hmm.
honoring people that did great work in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but uh, but he was overlooked. And I think to my mind, it's kind of I'm hoping that maybe this will be a start of recognizing some of the other people who spent the good portions of their career in our industry. I mean, Kim undeniably deserves every accolade that we can manage to get squeezed out for him. But there are a bunch of other people who I think I would like to see honored before they die. Right? Part of
Yeah.
this is, there was always the hope that Kim would be honored, and he passed away before that could happen. There are still people out there. Gary Gygax, never taken seriously until he was near the end of his life, and not really taken seriously on a large public scale uh,
Hmm.
until after his death. Same for Arneson. So there are
Yes.
people out there that we can still honor while they're around.
Yeah.
So
David Shepard in the chat asks me what it was like to collaborate with Kim on Heroes Lorebook for the Forgotten Realms. I believe Kim was the editor on that project. That was the he was great. I did. I also did. I worked on that, and I did the Villains Lorebook as well. And I don't know if Kim worked with me on both of those, but I remember he was editing at least one of them when we were both on staff with the magazines in TSR. And since we both worked for the periodicals, we were, uh, you know, offices were very close to each other. I would poke my head in and ask him something about Dragon or get his input on a particular thing that was causing me grief. And he would be, Dale, as long as you're here on the Villains Lore book here, I got to, I'm giving this character write up. I wanted to ask you. And all of a sudden I had to shift gears completely because I, in Dragon editor mode, I'm not in freelance writer mode. It was like, yeah, that sounds, let me go,
hmm,
it's like, I don't I have all my notes. I don't have my my freelance notes here, Kim, but let me write this down and yeah, I'll track that information down and yeah, and I'll get back to you on it. Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So like most editors, he made me look better because he checked my stuff and challenged my assumptions and was like, "Oh, yeah, I never thought of that way. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Yeah, I'll fix that. Thank you." Um, for me, those products were a bit of a challenge because I signed, I think, a big chunk of the Hero for Paul Collada, if I remember correctly, had like 20%. And what this book was, TSR had published approximately between 60 and 80 Forgotten Realms novels at that time. And there had been a previous product years before called The Hall of Heroes, which had game stats for a lot of the early novels characters. Now, games are games and novels are novels, and they don't always translate directly. There's a lot of stories that could be told about the tension in between games and books. But my job for the Heroes Lore book was to, as quickly as possible, read 60s Forgotten Realms novels and distill the information about the main characters, the heroes, and translate them as best I could into game stats. Subsequently, yeah, okay, yeah, I did that. Paul Collada did his batch of novels and collated them, turned them over to the editor. Well, when I knew that the Villains lore book was also coming up on the schedule because I was in the Forgotten Realms team at that time. So I went to Bruce Hurd, Bruce Hurd, who was the master of the schedule at TSI, and I asked him, Bruce, I'm doing the Heroes lore book where I'm taking notes and statting up all and highlighting and making marginal notes and everything on these 60 novels about the good guys in these books. There's also going to be the Villains lore book coming up. Am I going to work on that? Because if I am, when I'm doing all the research for the heroes, I can also just do the research for the villains. No. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't have the schedule worked out concretely that far out, but no, I can pretty much assure you that you're not, the way the schedules work, you're not going to do the villains lore. But okay, good, less work for me. You can guess what happened when the next batch of work schedules came out. Oh, who's designing the 100% of the villains lore book? Dale. Correct. Although that was not the word I used.
It started with Kara, though.
Yeah. Well, I do have all 60 of those novels still in that drawer right over there. In my office, beneath my at the time, I think it was Playmobil. They were doing a big fantasy thing, and I had the big Playmobil castle and all the knights, and they had the and I had the whole setup, for toys in your office, and okay, I've done this before. I know, I know what needs to be done, but I had to do a second batch of research through 60 Forgotten Realms novels.
Well,
so that was my experience.
Of course, you were the person. Of course, it was going to be you.
Of course, it makes sense. It's logical. Why have someone else have to teach themselves how to do this when obviously I already know how to do this? And no fault on Bruce Hurd at all. He didn't have the schedule worked out that far. He didn't know. So, yeah, that's just one of the things that happens. And it makes a great story, which I tell briefly.
By some definitions. Hello, Linnea. Thank you for popping in.
David Shepard also says, well said on the honoring people before they die, Stan. We've started to do that in the back of the free Spelljammer fanzine, Wild Space Magazine, that I edit. David, you are the person behind Wild Space Magazine. If I knew that before this moment, I apologize. I didn't make that connection. Spelljammer is in my top 3 favorite D&D campaign settings. It came out, like, I had been at TSI less than a year when it came out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I had kind of pitched a flying ships book for the Realms because Jeff Grubb was doing the Forgotten Realms comic book at the time and the AD&D comic book at the time. And I believe it was the Realms book that a lot of the characters, they went around in a sailing ship that also flew. And fantasy, flying ships, pirates, swashbuckling, that whole kind of thing. That's all right up my alley. And so I put together an informal, 1-page pitch about doing something like that for the Realms. Jim Ward, who was running the games and the magazines at the time, excuse me. And of course, nothing ever came from it because Spelljammer was being worked on at the time, but I didn't know that. When Spelljammer came out, it was like this is kind of like my idea, but 1,000 times better because Jeff Grubb did it. Yeah. So I'm very glad to know that, not only in fifth edition did, Spelljammer get get a comeback, get a its slipcase. That's the word I was looking for. Its own, cool slipcase product. I'm heartened to know that there are other fans of Spelljammer out there devoted enough to this setting to be doing the Wild Space magazine. So I'm very glad to virtually meet you, David. And Lester Smith, Game Master Extraordinaire, has joined us. Thank you very much for joining us, Lester.
Hey, Lester. Good to see you, my friend. Or, I mean, I'm not looking up, but you know what I mean.
I'm glad you decided to join us tonight, Les. Give a little update here on what Stan's been working on, because we've been talking about things other than what Stan's working on here for a while. Stan's working on his homage to the cover of the Fantasy Age RPG second edition from Green Ronin Publishing. Our friends Chris Pramus, Nicole Lindris, Troy Hewlett, and many others. The cover for this particular product was done by noted artist Wayne Reynolds. And who did you have on when you were initially
I was
doing
just about to
this?
say, the thing is, I had Chris Pramus on when I did this. I was talking to Chris while I did the.
I thought that was Chris. I remember that episode. Watching that episode, it was probably after the fact. But yes, I remember you speaking with Chris, but I couldn't remember if this was the particular product you had worked on or not. But
I've been able to in the second season of this show, I've been able to more often make a direct tie between what I'm drawing and who my guest is. In the first one, the first season, which is how I've come to think of it. Where I was focusing on one from each year of D&D, it became very difficult or it started out difficult to get someone who had worked on a product that was still around, unless I was going to keep having Jeff Grubb and Steve Winter and Steve Sullivan week after week after week, which of course would be fun too, but I wanted to interview lots of people. So
you could do a lot worse than have them on.
Yeah, no, I could definitely build a very successful show around that, one that I would find entertaining to host. But here, since the end of that, I've taken to. It's not a requirement that I do something that they did, but given the option to do something that is appropriate to the guest. And Green Ronin is having their 25th anniversary this year as a company. So I also have try and make sure I get a bunch of people from the company and products of theirs into my rotation to help celebrate.
Excellent. That's a very smart thing, Stan. You're a pretty smart guy for an artist.
I'm not half as dumb as I look.
No, I didn't say that.
I did. I know I look pretty dumb.
Oh, no, you don't, Stan. Come on. Don't be so self-deprecating. Hey, Cindy Robertson, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, Cindy, good to see you.
I am going to take a moment and kind of introduce our friend Lester Smith to people in the chat who may not know him.
Lester, who has also been a guest on the show earlier.
Oh, Well, in that case, I won't have. We don't have to
No,
talk
no,
about it.
please. Because what if they didn't watch that episode?
What do you mean people don't watch an episode? Come on, Stan. Everybody watches all your episodes.
I tell you what, one of the things I have definitely in mind this year. I still have too many people coming up to me, either in person or sending me emails or leaving messages saying, "How did I not know about the show? You've done how many episodes?" I'm like, all right, I clearly need to do a better job of getting the word out. There are these great episodes, like with Lester, like with the I don't know any of so many of the people we've talked about. And one of the things I said very early on amongst friends was how I wish I'd thought of this a couple of years earlier, so I could have talked to Kim, because I could certainly have
Mm-hmm.
talked him into sitting down and having a conversation with me. And I'm very
Oh,
glad.
that would have been fascinating.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I got to hear some Kim stories over the years, and it would have been wonderful to hear them again or hear more, and have a record of them. You know.
I remember on at least four different occasions, Jeff Grubb and Steve Winter and I being out with Kim and Pam and encouraging Kim. Kim, you need to write your memoirs. You should totally. We'd be telling stories, and he'd say, "Well, I remember a time." We'd say, "Oh, Kim, you got to write your memoirs." And he would look at us and he'd say, "Who would possibly be interested in that?" We'd say,
Yeah,
we would."
yes. You'll sell 3 copies right here. Yeah, I can just picture him saying that very thing.
Yeah.
Saying, you know, for those of you who might possibly have not watched every episode of 50 Years in the Stand, although, I can't imagine there is such an individual. Uh, Lester Smith, a guest on this very show, uh, legendary game designer. And since he's in chat and can't actually object, I'm going to just slander him unrelentingly in the next few minutes. Um, I believe he got his start at GDW.
I think that's right.
I believe the first thing he may have published professionally was a review in the old Space Gamer magazine.
That sounds right. Let's say that's true. Let's say that's true.
Let's Yeah. To be totally transparent, Lester is one of my best friends, and I am privileged to call him such and be able to continue to work with him to this day on his many, many publishing projects, the Lester Smith Publishing Empire. I am proud to be a small part of. But Lester started at GDW doing proofreading and other small scale projects rather. But he was so impressive and he was so good that the higher ups at GDW, which were Mark Miller, the designer of Traveler, and Frank Chadwick, the designer of many war games, Space 1889 role playing game, and many other things, tasked Lester with updating the Traveler 2300 role playing game, which used the Traveler system, but it was a near future. It was more solar system based than, galactic empires and so forth. Um, they tasked Lester with updating that game, which became the 2300 AD RPG, which I believe was almost certainly won some awards. Lester then also created the Dark Conspiracy
It's a dark,
RPG.
dark world out there.
Yeah, Dark Conspiracy. It's a dark world round down is something he used to say when he was running it for us. Oh, do we round up or round down our numbers? Round down, it's a dark world, is what Lester would say. He created the Dark Conspiracy modern horror role playing game, for which he received great accolades. At some point, he came aboard at TSR. If he's perhaps on this show again, if he hasn't told the story on the previous episode, with you, Stan. Maybe you'll have him back and he can tell the story then. I'm not going to tell his coming to TSR story. But he came to TSR, and for a while, I thought he was going to be my boss at Dragon Magazine, because that was one of the positions they were considering for him. Because Roger wanted to go to the game department, and oh, good. Lester types, Empire drew an involuntary snort from me, Dave. A snort is a worthy reply. I'm just glad you're paying attention, Les. Because apparently I'm long-winded.
Apparently.
Lester came to TSR, did many wonderful things, the foremost of which is he designed the world's first and best collectible dice game, Dragon Dice. A game which continues to be published to this day under auspices of a company that's not related to TSR or Wizards or Hasbro or anything. The company bought the rights to the game. Lester's worked with them over the years, and Dragon Dice, not only a wonderful game, it is also a very loud game, because it has lots and lots of dice, many of which are quite large. You roll them across a hardwood table, like we did back in the old days before there were, dice trays and things like that. When Lester and people were playtesting Dragon Dice in the building at TSR, everyone knew Dragon Dice was being playtested. Because there was lots and lots of dice being rolled. Now, it says YouTube is apparently stuttering for people again, but no, we're back. All right, so Surreptitious says it seems like we were losing packets, but now we're back. Okay.
Well, there's only so much we can do about that.
Yes. Again, I'm not going to go through every detail of Lester's illustrious career because I couldn't do it justice, no matter how long I talked. And what I will tell you now is that since he's retired, he's a gentleman of leisure. He's a gentleman. I don't know if he's a gentleman farmer, but he's a gentleman who lives on a farm. Put it that way.
He's a gentleman and he lives on a farm.
Yes,
we'll go there.
I don't know if he considers himself a farmer or not. I know he does farm work, but I don't know if he considers himself a farmer. And since his retirement, Lester has created no fewer than 4 different role-playing game systems. The D6 by D6 role-playing game, the D13 horror role-playing game, which he considers his, if not masterpiece, a bucket list item. This is the horror role-playing game he always wanted to design. He's also done the Bookmark No Hit Points role-playing game. Yes, it's an entire role-playing game on a bookmark or a playing card. You have your choice. And he's also got a bunch of supplements for that. Lots of different genres of things. I don't see anyone.
All right. In theory,
I see a 0 on in the viewer thing, but that might just take a couple minutes.
Yeah. Well, we just reconnected. We'll see what happens. Once again, the tech demons got us. And if no one else shows up, you and I can talk for a little while. I'm going to draw anyway.
Right. I don't know. Do you think I can talk for just a little while, or can I talk for a long?
Okay, Michael's back. So clearly we're going.
Woo-hoo. All right, go. Go.
I blame Comcast.
I blame Lester because I don't know if he's here or not yet. But
that's how you save yourself from getting fired.
I said enough nice.
I blame myself for making the firing you joke because it's. You can't fire me if I'm not here.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I bear no ill will about that. That was a beautiful thing. I mean, we couldn't have set that up better. Yeah, I've long said, in other situations and so forth in social circles, hey, I'm happy to be anybody's straight man. You know, you know. I like to think I'm really funny. I'm certainly not as funny as I think I am, but I'm also happy to be a straight man for people. So
If you want to be the top banana, you got to start at the bottom of the bunch.
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Well, I mean, we went a good almost 2 hours before that happened.
Hmm.
Well, hour
Chris
and a half
Andrews there.
anyway.
Nice part two is always better than part one. He says parenthetically, Empire Strikes Back. That still is probably the best Star Wars movie. Would you agree or disagree, Stan?
I would agree. I would agree. I think that the only thing that gives it a run for its money is um, Rogue. What's the name of it?
Rogue One,
Rogue One.
yes, which had such an interesting uh, production cycle, at least as we're led to believe, that directors leaving, you know Ron Howard apparently coming in and fixing things and doing reshoots and changing the script and doing a lot of work on the fly uh, to make a movie that is greater than the sum of its parts apparently, because it seemed to have a troubled production. But my God, is that a Star Wars film? Holy cow!
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Star Wars certainly we know a lot of people who like a lot of Star Wars,
Hmm.
right? But Star Wars as a product, as a property, means a lot of different things to different people, and it struggles with that, right? The people who look at Rogue One and Andor and say
Yes.
this is Star Wars. This is what Star Wars is finally living up to what it promised. Are often uh, I don't know if shouted down is stronger than what I want to say, but their vision is counterbalanced by the people who like the sillier, goofier, um, and more lighthearted adventure uh, version of it, right? Or even it's made for kids. It's a kids property uh, version of it, and
Hmm.
and all of them work. And to my mind, they are all Star Wars. But yes, I think that the Rogue One and the Andor side of it was very underserved in uh, in recent years until they came along.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The sort of the grungier, the I don't want to say dirtier, but the underside of the swashbuckling universe. You weren't up amongst the glittering spires of Coruscant in the Jedi Temple and so forth. You were down on the surface of Coruscant where there's very little sunlight, and a lot of people live really hard lives. And we got to see that in Rogue One. We got to see the hard decisions behind the space battles, the moral dilemmas,
Right?
and the
Yeah.
moral
The
compromises.
moral dilemmas, the just the feeling of a war movie, right? The feeling of a world where you these weren't the uh, oh, for goodness sake, Continue without restream. Okay. Restream was a problem. We'll see. Hopefully, everyone on is still on. Say something in chat. Let us know if you're watching. I think everyone watching on YouTube is probably still getting it, and restream is
We
not.
it says we have, looks like we have 4 eyes in the on the little eye. We
Okay,
have
good.
David, we have Michael, and we have Lester back.
All
Who, yeah,
right.
Lester, we crashed the stream to lock you out, Lester, because we wanted to talk about you but not say nice things.
We wanted to talk
Chris
about you
Andrew
behind your
points out
back,
that
and in order to do that, we
yes, yes,
needed you out.
yeah, exactly. Chris Andrew writes, George Lucas always said Star Wars were made for 12-year-old boys, but movies in the 70s and 80s didn't talk down to kids as much as they do today, and so those films very much felt older. Well, yeah, they weren't. Yeah, the original Star Wars trilogy, was so strongly inspired by the Flash Gordon serials and
Yeah.
pure pulp entertainment that wasn't necessarily aimed at children. Was certainly aware that they were a big part of the audience, but it didn't pander to them. Flash Gordon was there for everybody. It wasn't just for the kids. It was for the moms and the dads and the grandmas and the grandpas who were spending the day in the theater. Yeah, you could see the strings on the spaceships, but that doesn't matter. Yeah,
Well, but
it was.
that was what it was then. That was the
Yeah,
best they had
exactly.
then.
That was, it was pulp entertainment, and that's what Star Wars started out as. It was.
But I mean, Star Wars,
It,
just kind of grab that. Star Wars had that problem immediate. Well, beginning with Return of the Jedi. That was I don't know. People don't seem to remember how that split audience opinion. After Empire Strikes Back, there were a bunch of people who went to Return of the Jedi and thought, I mean, yeah, okay, it's a fine ending. I mean, it's over now, but that was
but
a kiddie movie. I wanted
yeah,
something more like
teddy bears.
wow.
Yeah, teddy bears kicking the
Yeah,
empire's butts all over. And I seem to remember this was a story that was going around at the time. That Lucas initially considered doing the Empire. I'm sorry, Return of the Jedi with Wookiees
yeah.
as the native population, but decided upon reflection that Chewbacca was too sophisticated an individual to to that implied the Wookiees were too technologically savvy, were too advanced to be the sort of primitive race that or species that the Ewoks were presented as. At the time, you know, myself, I was just happy there's another Star Wars movie. Oh my
Right,
God, Luke!
right.
Luke has got a lightsaber. He's fighting Vader again. He's not, and oh look, Lando's there, and you know, I didn't care about the fact that they were teddy bears. I was just thrilled that there was another Star Wars movie, and we were getting to see those characters again. You know,
I again we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that I'm just a bit older than you, just a little. When I
mm-hmm,
think that age gap is maybe the age gap where that lived, because I did like Return of the Jedi, but I also felt like, all right, well, they've just taken a step backwards. Like I wanted something more like Empire. Um,
mm-hmm.
and
which
I
was
I
which
did
was
think I did have a dismissive teddy bear comment or two in me at the time.
well, that's understandable. I just in retrospect, looking back, I remember talking to people who said that, and yeah, that's fine. I don't care if they're teddy bears.
Right.
We did just watch a Star Wars movie. Remember? That's what I remember. That's what I like.
Remember
The
when there
fact
was
that
no such thing as Star Wars? Well, now there
it
is a
was,
thing. Be happy for it.
exactly,
All
and
right.
I was. But yeah, and now there's so many of the IPs that people of our age loved, gravitated to, and gripped so fiercely over the years there wasn't anything new being produced in general.
Oh, hey,
Star Trek,
you mentioned Flash Gordon,
yes.
and that reminds me. I bring this up whenever Flash Gordon comes up. That so many people don't know that there is currently a really, really awesome Flash Gordon daily comic strip being syndicated and published. Um, did you know
I
that?
I did not know that. No.
It is awesome. It is it it's now two. I think they've started into their third year. Um, it and I happened to um, someone pointed me to it about a month after they started, so I was able to go back and look at all of the strips and read it from the start. Basically, the guy doing it, uh, it picked up from the end of the movie. The idea it is
Uh-huh.
that it's basically the adventures of those characters, and he loves the old strips, and he brings in characters and continuity from the old comic daily comic strips that
Mhm.
you don't. They're total Easter eggs. Like you need to be a deep uh, uh, syndicated comic strip Flash Gordon fan to get any of the things, but
Mhm.
he's using them to build this world of Mongo after the fall of Ming, and it
Mhm.
is just brilliant.
I'm gonna have to seek that out, Stan. So thank you for sharing that with us all. Uh, just one more note on Star Wars and the Ewok issue with Return of the Jedi. David Shepard says, I never watched Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure or Ewoks The Battle for Endor. Mr. Shepard, that's another reason why I admire you as much as I do.
Oh, Mister,
That
I
was a
watched I
wild.
watched Battle for Ender when I was in Japan, and I would watch anything in English.
Ah, sure.
It was something else. It sure was.
It was a more innocent time. But yeah, I was talking about, how we were.
Wilford Brimley in Star Wars. I tell you what.
It doesn't get any better than that. Oh, wait. Yes, it does. But we are, rather than, condemning the, missteps of the past, how lucky are we now that we have so much genre entertainment
Yeah.
that we can sit here
That yeah,
and
we can
pick it apart
right.
and say, I like this, I didn't like this, they shouldn't have done this, but I like that they did that. We, if you would have told the Stan and the Dale of, 1983, that someday there's going to be multiple Star Wars TV
Right.
shows that Star Trek was going to have, was not only going to come back in the 80s with a new show that, took a little while to find its footing, but became the foundation for, you know
Yeah.
everything that's come since. We're still watching, Star Trek today because Next Generation became as good as it was and became the pop culture uh, force that it did. And Michael in chat points out, yes, the geeks grew up and moved to Hollywood, and people of our generation, you know, ended up working in Hollywood and making more of the stuff that they loved. And that includes gaming stuff. You know, there have been and continue to be people who cut their teeth on role playing games,
Yeah,
who went on to have huge careers in what they used to call broadcast media, in TV, in movies, and so there are, and not just performers too. You know, we all know. You know, Vin Diesel plays D&D. You know, Robin Williams was a big tabletop gamer. He was a huge miniatures gamer. He loved Warhammer. You know, Mark Hamill played Deborah Ann Woll, who was on Daredevil and True Blood. She's a big tabletop gamer. You know, these are the people that you hear about, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes too who learned the craft of story, who learned character from from tabletop games. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was the creative force behind Leverage, for example.
yeah, yeah.
The TV that TV show and many other shows since then.
Weirdly, we had a nice long leverage conversation at lunch today.
Oh, interesting. I remember learning about him and his background in gaming from a tabletop episode.
Mm,
You know, Will Wheaton's and um, Geek and Sundry, Felicia Day did you know 4 seasons of, I believe it was tabletop that on Geek and Sundry. Uh, you know, playing board games, and they did a couple of role playing things too. There was one episode. This was the one that I recall. They were doing an adventure using the Fate system, and the Leverage showrunner, who's a gentleman whose name I do not recall, was talking about his background in tabletop and how continued to use uh, things like Fate to, to to flesh out characters he was developing for his projects. You know, okay, well, you know, I got an idea for this character, but you know, how can I round him out? Well, look, there are these games that create
mm,
well-rounded, interesting, exciting characters. Hmm, maybe I can
yeah,
use these tools for my television shows. You know,
yeah. You know what? This kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Kim earlier, and how the the past generation of gatekeepers did not respect the things that came from gaming, and the current generation of gatekeepers, or maybe gatekeepers, but the current generation of
creators.
creative, the people in charge of what gets created, love
Mhm.
gaming and have a strong
Right,
strong
because
connection to it.
you know, yeah, because they grew up with it. You know, they played it. They learned from their brothers or sisters or cousins or parents. You know, that gaming was fun, and they didn't get any of the ghettoization or gatekeeping that as back when we were talking about Kim. You know, especially once TSR kind of kicked the doors down on quote unquote mainstream fantasy and science fiction publishing with the Dragonlance novels, and then everything they did, you know, Forgotten Realms and Bob Salvatore and so on and so on and so on.
Well, I
There were
mean,
a lot. There were a lot of people in mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream science fiction fantasy, which is of course a very minor part of, you know, the overall world of print publishing back then. You know, they were already, science fiction and fantasy was already a small pond of the overall world of print publishing in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that you might have thought they wouldn't do to gaming, shared world, IP driven entertainment that was done to them. Yeah, if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's a weird. Uh, I was thinking about this a little earlier in the hour. Well, hour a little earlier in our stream here. That um, so much of it falls into defending your turf, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you just said is a big part of it, of why it got disrespected. Was uh, it was a very small pond, and TSR successfully managed to come out and blow the doors off it, and suddenly, you know, a, a major chunk of the bookshelf space was devoted to them and not to the the people who had been working in the small, dedicated sci-fi fantasy pool, and so they wanted to count themselves as different. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one take on it, right? They needed to have a way to say that's no, they can't just come in here and win awards and be the best sellers. They're
Mm-hmm.
just, and I put the just in air quotes here, they're just derivative. They're just shared
Mm-hmm.
world fiction. We are
Right.
serious.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but one of the main proponents of that um, perspective was Charlie Brown, the editor of Locus magazine, which for a long
Yeah.
time was sort of the Bible of science fiction and fantasy publishing. If you wanted to know what was going on in the subgenre of science fiction and fantasy, in the niche of SF and F, in the overall publishing world, you needed Locus because again, no internet. You needed magazines to do that.
Yeah.
That was and Mr. Brown did not appreciate the TSR kicking down those doors
No.
and stomping all over his little pond, uh, to the point where the magazine refused to list shared world novel sales in the same charts as quote unquote air quotes real science fiction and fantasy. Very often, because if they had listed them in the same sales charts, TSR's Dragonlance Forgotten Realms and other novels would have completely dominated those sales chart lists.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brown and people with his perspective did not like that. They were working, from their perspective, they were working too hard to have this interloper, this upstart from the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, come in and start
Right,
selling more.
and writers who hadn't put in their time, and writers who didn't come through the same,
Right.
who are Weiss and Hickman? Who, what's this
Who's
Weiss and
this
Hickman?
Salvatore guy?
Yeah.
How yeah, how dare he be so popular? you know, when
I mean,
when he didn't slog, for 5 or 10 years trying to get short stories published in the science fiction and fantasy magazines, and then working his way up to the point where he could get an agent, and the agent would have to work for him, and
right.
to get the stories placed, get him an opportunity to get a one book deal, one book, and no, you know, now they should have known better.
Well, I mean, again,
But
you know what? It's they should have known better. But you wind up fighting for your piece of turf.
Hmm.
Right? What are you going to do if this gets taken away? All right, hold on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna interrupt this conversation for a bit to talk a little bit about what I'm doing drawing wise.
please do. I'm going to step away for a moment, but I shall return.
All right.
But I have to give my 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 voice a rest because I have been talking so
Well,
much.
well, Dale, you've got so much to say. All right, so look here, and as I often do, I break things down into layers to get the effects that I do. So I've got our main characters, our two main characters here, are on a layer, just a layer on themselves, and on a layer above them, I have the what I've what I've distilled out of the lizard creatures who are attacking them. So this is all going to be like this, inked in black. Although I'm going to change the sword so that the lines are actually in flame colors to make it feel more flamey. But now the background. We look at this drawing, this painting by Wayne Reynolds. We see that things kind of get a little softer as they go in the background. It's not it's a challenge on how to achieve that when you're doing cartoons and line drawings of any sort, but a simplification and cartoonification like I do. So what I do on a lot of them, and I've talked about this before, is I take the backgrounds and rather than have the lines be done in black, have the lines be done in a softer color, a gray or a brown or a blue or a green, depending on what they are, to help create that feeling of depth. But there's a challenge here because I want that feeling of depth on the background, but I also, we can look here and say there's probably 3 layers of background. There's the layer of the buildings and stairs they're right in front of, and then there's another uh, layer of it as the stairs get higher and turn into these howling snake-like creatures in the background, and then even further back is the the buildings behind them. So what I decided to do for that, now let me shrink that. Oh, cancel. Shrink this up so that we can look at the whole thing. I'm going to take the first layer of background, turn them off, and this where they're fighting, and that's going to be a layer on its own. Probably I'm going to take that. I've drawn it in black, but I will probably wind up taking that down to a gray or probably a dark blue. And see in the my pencil version of this, which I drew in green, I just drew it as one piece of line art. But I'm now going to create a second layer uh, where I'm going to do the next segment of the stairs and the screaming uh, lizard guy there. The stairs and what's behind there. And that's going to be an even lighter toned line work. And then the buildings behind it will probably just be a background layer on its own. So I can give that another level of sharpness. And so in the end, I'm going to try to create a 3 layers of depth. Well, 4 layers of depth, really. 5 layers of depth, really. So we have these background and the snake guy and these. What we've got on the screen is going to be 3 layers, and then a 4th layer is going to be these two, and then just because they're larger and the lines are a little thicker, a 5th layer is the snake men in the front. So that's
Five
what I'm.
layers, 5 layers. Do I hear six? Six. Do I hear six?
And the interesting thing is that's also how when people put together, when publishers or printers put together 3D comics and two dimensional things that you would get 3D glasses to look at. That's what they do. They slice layers of depth and place place them on different focal levels.
Hmm. Yes.
Um,
If I don't know if people, uh, uh, the kind of 3D movies that they have now, are not the same kind that you and I grew up with.
right.
I yeah, because the 3D glasses you and I would wear, Stan, when we went to see what was Space Hunter, or what the 3D movies. There was you get the little cardboard glass frames,
Right.
and one would be a red
The
piece
red
of
and blue
cellophane,
lenses.
be
Yeah.
like a green piece of cellophane, and so you'd watch those, and your brain would put those together in your head to look three-dimensional. Now, I'm sure most everyone who saw a 3D movie this way at some point took those glasses off and looked at the screen, and you realized at that point that there is a red layer of the film and a green layer of the film, and as you pointed out, they're at different focal lengths. Your brain cannot put those together. That's why you needed the glasses. But yeah, you're absolutely right about
Yeah.
the layers, and I didn't know anything about art or layering or anything like that. But that's the perfect explanation of that's how you get depth. Whether
Yeah.
it's a piece of static art like you were doing, or like a 3D movie, it's all about the layers. And Surreptitious points out a good number of layers also makes for a fine bean casserole.
Yes. Well, it's an important depth. Depth is good. Layering, it's delicious.
Layers. Mm. Layers of flavor, Stan. That's a very flavorful drawing you're working on
All right. So, having said that's why I wanted to kind of take a chance to say that because I'm about
there.
to turn off these, and I'm even going to turn off. I'm now finished with this layer of uh, of the background, and I'm going to turn it off and create a whole new layer to ink what's behind it.
Well, I'm glad you did that, Stan, because that's one of the things that I enjoy most about watching this and watching your improv cartoon show every Thursday night on this same channel.
On the same
Is
channel.
oh yes, is you stopping and taking a few moments and talking about the techniques you're using and how an artist assembles an illustration. Because as you and I were talking offline before we got started tonight, I you know I have no visual art skill whatsoever. I've told this story to many people. Probably have mentioned it here. You as wonderful and cool and sometimes intimidating as it was to start working at TSR and be around all these incredibly talented people who were kind and nice, and it was like, oh, hey, hi, nice to meet you. Uh, the What blew me away the most is what I had the least access to intellectually and creatively, and that was the art. I took every opportunity I could to go into the art room and just watch
Yeah.
just watch Clyde Caldwell, watch Jeff Easley, see what they were working on, and and to the point you were making, they would very often be at different stages in whatever pieces of art they were working on, and it's like, oh, okay, Clyde is painting the foreground character in this in whatever piece of art he's working on, and you walk around to a different corner of the room, and oh, Jeff Easley's doing the backgrounds. Ah, oh, You know, in my uneducated brain at the time, it was just like, you just paint, and oh no,
Right.
there's actually, it all just comes out. Well, no, you do it in stages and there's layers, and like any creative endeavor, you know, it doesn't just show up fully formed. You know, there's lots and lots of work involved.
Yeah,
No.
that's one of the things. I mean, I know, as you say, I say this a lot on the Thursday show about um, about building something in steps, in shapes. I talk about starting with um, simple shapes, that you don't start with, like, I've just drawn this staircase here, but there were 4 steps of sketching before I got to putting those lines down. And a lot of people who want to learn how to draw, or want to just pick up and start drawing, want to start at step 3 and don't, because they uh, at the point in my experience, I don't know, career that I am, I can get through steps 1 and 2 quickly, and sometimes with just a line or two, because I understand what they mean. But
Hmm.
or but you can't I can't do it without them, and it's easy to dismiss them as a meaningless little line, but it it's a whole stage of a simple shape that I've created.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, there's
yeah,
yeah, and that's kind of I think the key behind the psychology of an artist and the psychology of a fan of that artist. You know, everybody wants to be a great artist or a great writer or a great singer or a great guitar player, but before you can be a concert pianist, you got to play chopsticks.
right.
You know, before you can be uh, a guitar wizard like Jeff Beck or Eddie Van Halen or anything, you got to play a lot of scales. You got to
Yep.
do the boring, tedious practicing over and over and over and pushing yourself and getting a little bit better. Yeah, that's I have that in my own experience. You know, my wife, she's a crafter. She has done a variety of crafts over the decades I have known her. Yeah, and she's open and she invites me to take part. And there's no, I'm not going to be good at it, so I'm not going to start. I'm going to suck at it, and that's just the thing. If you want to ever be good at something, you
You
got to
got to
let
suck at
yourself
it
suck.
first. Yeah.
You got to let yourself suck at it for a while first. Yes. Um, Nothing to do with sucking in any way, shape, or form. Michael in the chat says it's soon to be Colbert time, so he's going to say good night
Well, say
to
hello to
us
Stephen
who are here.
Colbert for us.
Yes, really can't blame you for that.
Nope.
Uh, no, that
And you
is
know the
that is
good thing about doing
perfectly.
this, like in this format, is you can come back and watch it later.
Hmm.
I mean, you could watch Colbert later, but we won't say that.
Yes, yeah. It's not like he's not
Not
going to
like
be on.
I'm not going to watch Colbert tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. All right. It's all about priorities, Michael. Come on. Have a good evening.
Go enjoy your Colbert.
Yes, enjoy your evening, Michael. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight
Indeed.
and contributing to
I
the chat.
just was watching the Colbert and the Kimmel material from yesterday. I don't know if you watch either, but they both appeared on each other's shows yesterday. Kimmel is
I
in
New
uh,
York.
yes, he's in Brooklyn for the week.
Ah, right. I saw thumbnails on YouTube for those earlier in the day when I was in the middle of my day job. I was like, ooh, I'm going to have to watch those later.
Yeah,
But
I highly recommend it.
I have not done so yet because, of course, I'm spending my
You're
evening
here.
with my man.
And we're so glad you are.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad to be here. And this is a point I'm going to hammer over and over because, well, I can. Believe it or not, and you especially, Stan, have been exposed to this, and or perhaps enduring it is the correct verb. Those these Wednesday nights that I'm lucky enough to spend the time online with you, I talk more than I do the rest of the week combined.
Well, you know what? I guess I should send you some lozenges.
I recently just found relocated a tin of cinnamon Altoids
Mm.
that have been temporarily misplaced. If there is a thing in this world that I am addicted to, it's cinnamon Altoids. When they
Ugh.
first, when Altoids first came out, the curiously strong mint, and I would have a tin of these, I'm near in my drawer at work, whether it was, TSR or Wizards or something like that, going to have a meeting or, you come back from lunch, you just pop a mint in your mouth, just, because you had, garlic bread and, spaghetti for lunch. And so I don't want to have garlic bread all afternoon. So you put them in your mouth. When they came out with the cinnamon Altoids, like, oh, cinnamon, that's interesting. I put one in my mouth. And I found myself going the entire day, and there was not a time when there was not a cinnamon Altoid in my mouth. I was chain smoking cinnamon Altoids. As soon as one was gone, before I popped another one in my mouth, and I, without even realizing, not being conscious of it, I was like, man, I'm going through a lot. There's not many Altoids left in that tin. I'm going to have to go buy another tin. What? Oh, I've just been just like one after the other, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. Now, eventually, I realized that's probably not really good for my teeth, so I stopped doing that. But that was a serious habit there for a little while.
I'm more of a mint Altoider. I like Altoids were my first introduction to curiously strong, and I
Hmm.
I got to the point where Altoids weren't near strong enough for me.
Yes, yes. It also seems this is such a weird thing to be talking about, that when uh, Altoids first hit the American market or the Midwest market, because I think they were they were not only curiously strong, they were potent. And it seemed, and maybe this was just my perception, but it seemed that at some point they became less potent. Not that I was just getting used to them, but it's like, okay, the manufacturers, okay, we're cranking this back a little bit. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that
It
that
seemed
was
that way to me too, but I'm willing to uh, I'm willing to think that it was just getting used to it, but maybe not. Maybe they were just too strong. Maybe they discovered that people don't want it that strong.
hmm
I didn't.
it's
I sure did.
interesting, the differences in culture regarding that now, because I believe, um, I don't remember for sure, but I believe that Altoids were originally, it may just be marketing, but I believe they were originally imported from Britain, the UK, or something like that, some foreign land. Um, Now maybe I don't know if that's true or not, but I did recently learn something. For example, something as mundane as mustard,
Mm.
that you put in your hot dogs. Even now with you know American, spicy brown mustard, Gouldens, Grey Poupon, Dijon mustard, so on and so forth. Uh, American mustard is nowhere near
Mm.
as potent as off store shelf, the equivalent of Heinz or Hunt's or whatever they might have in the UK. Just standard mustard you put on your UK food. There have been more than a few Americans that have told me stories about, oh yeah, I got, it was in the UK, blah blah blah, got some mustard, put it on whatever my meal was, and getting their socks blown off by how strong
Yeah.
British mustard is in comparison to American mustard. And oh yeah, we talk about Americans. We eat 1,000 Scoville unit wings and stuff. Yeah. You eat one of them, and you have to sign a waiver, get a medical waiver that you won't sue the place for it. But have you tasted British mustard? Good Lord!
It's funny considering how bland so much of standard British food is. No, their
See,
mustard
now,
is spicy.
yes, I have two reactions to that. One, maybe that's where they get the flavor from, but that's where they but my second reaction is, I know English cuisine has a reputation for being bland. They boil everything, right there, boiled cabbage, boiled potatoes, boiled meat, blah blah blah. I have had some wonderful English food that it has never come near a pot of boiling water, and maybe that was true in earlier generations, when culinary resources were not to the level they are now. Uh, but some level of me bristles a little bit at it. Oh, it's terrible, bland British food. But maybe that's a previous generation. Maybe that's all they had.
I don't
Maybe
know
they.
what. So when you talk about that, I have some thoughts on this too, because I've had some really good food from England or from Britain too. A lot of it comes from other places,
Mhm.
and a lot of it is just really good home cooked versions of
Mm,
relatively simple food.
sure. David Shepard says he loves English mustard. He said he once had a ham sandwich and used English mustard instead of butter. It was really good, but I cried the whole time. LOL. Oh, it hurt so good. And Surreptitious asks, doesn't the UK mustard include the full mustard seeds?
Yeah. Yes.
Including like the hulls, and also sometimes horseradish. Yes, I know that. I do know they do venture into the horseradish, and I enjoy a nice horseradish mustard myself. Uh, although my lovely wife Cindy does not, and on at least one occasion, she has mistakenly grabbed the wrong mustard and uh, inadvertently ruined at least one bite of her dinner. It's like,
When I in college, uh, I dated a very lovely young woman of Korean extraction, and we went to a sushi restaurant once, or a Japanese restaurant. She had ordered sushi, and I had ordered something else, and she said, "Oh, the sushi is great. You got to try it." So I grabbed a bit of sushi off her, a piece of sushi off her plate, and I went to dip it in her soy sauce. And she said, "Oh, you may not want to do that. It's a little hot." And I said, "It's a little hot." She says, "Yes, I put wasabi in it." And I said, "Oh, well, I I know wasabi. Yeah, no, that's great." Well, it wasn't just she didn't just use a little wasabi. I didn't even look at it. The Her soy sauce was green. There was so much wasabi in it. The liquid in the plate was green. So I just dipped it in and put it in my mouth, and my nose crawled into the back of my head, and I
Mhm.
started coughing. And she
Yeah.
said, "I told you it was a little hot."
Yes. Wasabi being a little, it's interesting also that far from being a culinary expert, uh, I understand that a lot of the quote unquote wasabi we get here in America, in our little packages of store bought
Yeah.
sushi and so forth, isn't really wasabi. It's just horseradish that they colored
Well,
green.
the thing is that there's a difference between wasabi, ground wasabi, and wasabi paste. And
Okay.
wasabi paste is actually uh, mostly horseradish,
Okay. Because
and that's what's
I,
going on there.
okay, I understand. Okay, that's
So
interesting. Yeah,
when we say wasabi, we are talking about wasabi paste, right? What you put on the sushi and whatever. It's almost never is it the does it have the consistency like the ginger does of actual sliced ginger of a vegetable, right?
mhm.
Real wasabi is a vegetable, and when you have it, it's more like a puree texture. And so if you get anything that's got that actual smooth, creamy, manufactured level of smoothness, that's a paste. That's a manufactured paste, and it's mostly wasabi
Horseradish.
or horseradish. Horseradish, yes. No wasabi. Uh, Fresh wasabi, also hot. Not nearly as hot, but not, it doesn't have that same go straight to the back of your nose effect that
Mhm.
that horseradish does.
Yes, yeah, a nice dose of horseradish. Yeah, I was like, you get that in, whether you're expecting it or not. It can be a good sensation or a bad sensation. But it's like I can feel every the I can feel the entirety of my sinuses right now.
All right, I think I've gotten the line work done for this. Let me turn on all
Yes,
the layers. It looks like chaos, but because they're on different layers,
it
it's
looks amazing. What it looks like, Stan.
thank you. So got the original here and the stand cartooned version, original on the left, stand cartooned version on the right. I will work to. I'm not sure. I may even make. You know what? I guess I'm not done, but I'm thinking to make the lizard men in the front, the lines even a little thicker than that, just to
Hmm.
pop them forward a little more.
So
Yeah.
how would you do that, Stan? Would you just highlight that layer and then just go back with your tool and thicken those lines
Uh,
manually, or is that something that you could
Manually. I'm
do?
going to come back because I don't want to just make it. There are some apps that will let you just add a number of pixels thickness to make anything out. And you'll often see that in coloring books. Um, but what I want to do is decide that some of these, kind of the way I did at the beginning, like the lines are not of a uniform width. There's a stroke going on there. What I
Mhm.
want to do is play the same thing and
Yeah.
do some of that. Anyway, as we get ready to wrap up, Dale, you know what we haven't talked about at all
What
is
haven't we talked
that I
about, Stan?
threatened that we would is baseball.
Oh, yes, you're right. We haven't talked a single word about it. Not here. We've chatted about it.
Right. And it's not
Baseball
because my
Messenger.
Mets collapsed into a heap. I can live with that. That happened. How did the Brewers do today? I know they won their game one against the Reds, right? Or they playing the
No,
Reds? Oh
they're
no,
the
they
number
won their
one
division,
seed.
didn't
They're
they?
not, yes, they,
All
they
right,
not
so
only won the division, they're the number one seed. The right now, according to the unnamed sports app that I use, the Dodgers are winning in the bottom of the seventh, 8-2 over the Reds.
Okay, well. So who are they? Which are they going to play the winner of the Reds Dodgers, or are they going to play the winner of the other series?
I believe they're going to play the winner of the Padres Cubs series. Or no, the Phillies are in there somewhere too. Let me look.
The Phillies are the other team that won their division, so they're waiting. They're going to play the other.
Yes, they're going to play the winner of Reds Dodgers. Yes, yeah. So the Brewers will play the winner of the Cubs Padres series.
All right. So how did Game 2 of the Cubs Padres go?
Let me find that. Major League Baseball. Let's see. Okay. Dodgers are beating the Reds. The Guardians beat the Tigers 6-1. The Padres are up on the Cubs. Oh no, they beat the Cubs 3-0. And the Yankees beat the Red Sox. Those are the 4 games
All
that were
right.
played today. Again, you and I being of an age, Stan, and the incredible immediate access we have to information now. Did you adore This Week in Baseball as much as I did as a kid?
Yeah. Who didn't? Who
Because
didn't?
go ahead.
I mean, back in the day when you'd find out about what was happening, what you could see about your team and what
You know,
got covered on the nightly news, but you really
mhm.
didn't get any coverage of what was going on for the out of town teams other than the basic facts. And getting that once
Yes.
a week where you'd have God, I'm blanking on the announcer's name. What was his name?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it too. Let me see if I can find it while you're. Come on. There we go. I got to open a
Instant
new
access to
tab.
all the world's info. They can sure tell you.
In baseball, American television series. Come on, tell me who the Mel Allen,
Mel Allen, yes, Mel Allen.
the mellifluous tones of Mel
Mm,
Allen. Yeah, because as you said, the only sports you got on TV was at the end of the last segment of the local news where they talked about the local team, and if you were in a big enough market, perhaps local teams, depending on the season and which
yeah,
sports were active at the time. Yeah, and other than that, you had to go to the daily newspaper to get the box scores. For baseball, and it used to be that NFL was only on Sundays, and you watched the pregame shows, and the postgame shows, to see
right.
what was going on in the league outside of the one game you could watch that day, or was a big deal if CBS or NBC actually had a double header, showing you one of the late game was a big national, would want to be a big national important game, but yeah.
Oh,
So
or worse, if your team was playing in the late game, but there was a big national game that preempted it. Oh, imagine that.
yes, yes, yeah, the yeah, one of the glamorous teams was playing the Roger Staubach Dallas Cowboys or the Ken Stabler Oakland Raiders, or you know
Joe Montana 49ers.
yes, that was the next team I was going to see. I always kind of liked the 49ers, but especially of that era. But yes, your Cincinnati Bengals, your Green Bay Packers,
Right.
your Seattle Seahawks once they existed. Yeah. No, no, we're not going to show you that game. We're going to show you the Raiders.
That was, I mean, talk about things that people forget. What a revelation ESPN and Sports Center was when it came along. Because again, as you were describing, all you got otherwise was what you got on the late night news in the way you were describing. Right, it was your hometown team, and maybe a quick readout of what else happened, but certainly no highlights unless something of historic proportions happened.
Yeah,
So
you'd get a graphic over the, with the
right,
scores. From
out
that,
of town scores.
yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people, we did. Our family didn't adopt. Weren't early adopters of cable, so we didn't see a lot of this. But there were, the very early days of ESPN where you were looking at it. You go back and you can look at the stuff now, and you're, ooh, they really thought they could do a network about this, because
Of
they didn't have
sports?
contracts for any of the major sports. They were showing bowling, which was the
Yeah.
province of, you know Sunday morning local, you know advert local broadcast, bowling with the champs, bowling for dollars, bowling on Sunday mornings. And
Well, you did grow up in Wisconsin.
well, it was on the Chicago. It was on the Chicago station too, I believe, or that there were so many Milwaukee stations, and they all had their own bowling show. Uh, I've mentioned this before. Lucky enough to grow up in this area, so that we not only got Milwaukee broadcast stations, we got Chicago broadcast stations. So instead of 3 stations, we had 6. You know,
Yeah.
plus we had WGN, which was a super station back in the day. And not only did I watch Bozo Circus and a lot of 70s Cubs games on WGN, but on Sundays that was like the best day of TV, because it was Flash Gordon serials and the 50s Lone Ranger and Cisco Kid and One Step Beyond and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and then then in the afternoon they would have family classics with Fraser Thomas, and they would play classic films, and that's one of the main reasons I fell in love with film, because I watched Robin Hood,
Mhm.
Scaramouche, and Moby Dick, and the Flaming the Arrow, and the Black Shield of Falsworth, and all these wonderful adventure films from previous decades, and that fed my sort of serious film education, where I got my other other types of film education from WFLD, which was a UHF station out of Chicago, Channel 32, and the son of Sven Gulli was showing
Thankfully.
he was showing monster movies and Universal horror movies, and Godzilla and Gamera, and these weird foreign movies, and these you know such a guilty pleasure. Right, terrible film, no production values whatsoever. But to this day, you know, if I see it's on a streaming service, it goes in my queue. I don't know if I ever watch it, but it
Hmm.
goes in my queue. The Killer Shrews.
You know what? That was one of the very first ones I ever saw. In fact, so there used to be a program that aired in New York, and I think it was syndicated also, called Chiller Theater.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the very first Godzilla movie I ever saw was Godzilla versus was I was just called Monster X, um, and it was the movie's actual title is Godzilla versus the Astro Monster. But
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, that I love that, and that got me back to watch the Chiller Theater again. And the second movie, I thought I was hoping it was going to be another Godzilla movie. It wasn't. It was the Killer Shrews.
Starring the actor who would later go on to play Sheriff Rufus P. Coltrane on the Dukes of Hazzard as the dramatic lead,
Oh
and
man.
special effects amounted to putting bad um, sort of wolf pelts on dogs and everyone calling them giant shrews when they were clearly dogs. So,
Oh yeah 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 yeah.
yeah, but that, you know, those two things and a few other things, really contributed to my love of film. People are talking in the chat. Lester says he's lurking and listening while working and visiting. David Shepard talks about when he was a kid, color TV was new in the UK, and the BBC were told to put colored sport on the TV to make people buy colored sets. So they put snooker on TV all the time. And Lester shares our love for the Killer Shrews. Um, David Shepard also says, one of my online friends told me that a number of Spelljammer monsters are based on things from Japanese anime. That does not surprise me at all, because there's a
That
big
seems
story.
very
There's a
likely.
story that's a story that's been told, perhaps even by me, somewhere on the internet, about the development of the original second edition Monstrous Compendium Spelljammer appendix. Um, Without retelling the entire story, uh, we wanted to. TSR staff wanted to throw a party at Gen Con. TSR management didn't want to pay for it, so somebody had the idea of, instead of paying freelancers to do the Spelljammer Monstrous Compendium appendix, we would do it in house, and instead of getting paid for it, all the money that they would have paid the freelancers would instead go to the TSR party at Gen Con that year. So that's what had happened. People created Spelljammer creatures from, the depths of their imagination, from their favorite IPs, or in some cases from, earlier versions of D&D, where, oh well, there's no example of this creature from first edition and second edition yet, so I'm going to slap it into Spelljammer, just so there's a version of these creatures in second edition now, so people don't forget about them. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I think that was the first time that happened. But that kind of became a tradition with those
It became
monsters.
a tradition, and that it for a while, by the time I got there, it was the Ravenloft product, the Children of the Night series, was the one that
Mm-hmm.
put on the schedule for the purposes of raising money for the designers party.
Yes, I remember. I remember those. I remember I was very proud, because I hadn't, at that time, we were back at TSR, and I hadn't done any work in Ravenloft, although I really wanted to. I wanted to get in there and play around a little bit. The very first Children of the Night, my pitch, my creature, my little chapter there got accepted. So I was like, "Oh, I'm in a Ravenloft product!" Yay!
All right, all right. I think I'm getting it.
As several people have commented in this chat stand, for some reason I wanted to switch those around and and say words that aren't actually words. As people in the chat have been saying, Stan, this is a wonderful example of your artistic talent.
Oh well,
The,
thank you,
the
thank you.
lines are crisp, sharp, you explained the layering, you explained the weight of the weight of the lines. Um, my eye is so drawn to the bend of the snake man on the left's neck, the flames licking the tip of that scimitar, and a dead center image of the shield.
of the
Everything just pulls your
everything
eye,
goes right
pulls
to
my
the
eye
circle.
right into the shield.
You
Which I
know, that
is
reminds
a
me
good.
of a thing that happened. I'm mostly self taught in art. I've taken classes from time to time, but I was early self taught and mostly um, besides talking to other artists, not trained. But I did after I graduated from college. I moved back home. I went to college in upstate New York. I moved back home to suburban New York City, and I took some evening courses at the School of Visual Arts, where you don't have to you know you don't have to pass a portfolio test. Anyone can take the evening class as
Mhm.
long as you pay. So I signed up for some evening classes, and my my basic drawing skill was put made me fit right in. Like I was better than some and not as good as others, but I felt like everyone in class kind of had I didn't seem out of place. No one questioned who's who's the rube who's. But every once in a while, there would be some basic principle that I would break, and it's like the the one that sticks out most in my mind was the very first week of this class on humorous illustration. We got an assignment um, to draw. It was a version of what I did last summer. What would have been an essay, but here do a drawing, which is what I did last summer.
Mhm.
And I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to make a new drawing and do a quick sketch for you of that. So I drew a big couch, right? And on one half, it was me lying on the couch, dreaming of all the things I was going to do. And it was a drawing of me playing baseball, me acting, like holding a skull, acting out Hamlet, just a bunch
Mhm.
of different things I might do with my summer. And I'm lying here with a big smile on my face, sleeping. And over here is me sitting on the couch with a remote in my hand, just going click, 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 and like a bowl of cheese doodles here.
Mhm.
Right, so what I dreamed of doing and what I did. Now the couch we had at home was very much shaped like this, and it had a big. It basically was a two cushion couch,
Okay.
and so I drew it like that, and there was a went like this. Now there's a rule in illustration in particular that you shouldn't put a big vertical line down the middle of your drawing.
Okay.
And I inadvertently did because I was drawing the couch the way it was.
Mhm.
And so, but the drawing on its own, I thought, and I thought was really good. Right? It was funny, and I did a good job of it. We came into class, and we hung all our solutions up on the wall, and then talked to each other. Oh, I like what you did there. Oh, what's this? Oh, blah blah blah. And everyone came over and said to me, "What? Oh, that's go. I love that. Oh, look, it's so funny. Oh, look at this." The professor then, during class, went around and gave critiques of everyone's.
Mhm.
And he gets to mine, and he just looks at it and says, "Who can tell me what basic law or basic rule of illustration Mr. Brown is broken here?" And someone said, "Uh, he drew a a vertical line. He drew a vertical line. Right, look at this. Just split it with a line, and that and everything that ruins the whole picture. And um, and first of all, it's like, well, no one ever taught me that rule. I mean, it makes sense. I get it. And you're right. I just because the couch looks that way doesn't mean I needed to draw that. The drawing would have worked great just like that, but I didn't draw it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bristled a little. Like, he didn't say anything nice about it. And I thought, well, all right, yeah, there's a line there, but the rest of that drawing's pretty good, and it's kind of funny. It's a humorous drawing. So the next week, this became the theme for the whole year. I don't know whether the guy. I like to think that maybe he thought I showed so much potential that he needed to point out the mistakes I made. But it got to the point where every week we'd hang our solutions on the wall, and people would come in, and we'd look around, and well, at the end of each class, after he'd torn me apart, we'd be taking our stuff off the wall, and people would say, "Man, I think he was a little harsh on you this week." And my fellow students were very supportive. But then the next week would come up, we'd hang it on the wall, and we'd look, and they'd say to me, "Oh, this one's good. Oh, he's going to love this one. Look at what you did there." And he'd get up, and he'd say, "Who can tell me what Mr. Brown has done this week?" And they'd turn on me. Now, often they'd have to guess, because they couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong either until someone guessed it, and then they'd all go, "Oh, yes, he definitely did that."
Oh, yes, he definitely did. Chris Andrew points out, but you still remember that all these years later. That's a good teacher.
No, it's a load of crap. It's not a good teacher. He made his point well, but he should. I mean, no, that's not a good teacher. Because if it wasn't for the fact that I was very confident in my own, all he did was criticize me. He never once said, "Good drawing. You did this well. You did that well." And I've had other teachers in art who've given me some, like, "You did this and you can't do that. This is bad. But you know what? This works. That works." Or, "I like the way you do it. You know what? It's a cartoon, and it's not supposed to be a cartoon, so you get a D. But as a cartoon, it's pretty good." No, he was a mean old man.
As a friend of mine would say, "Bitter, table for one, bitter, bitter."
I mean, I learned from him, but I also did not let him get into my belief of my understanding of what I did well. He's definitely he was not wrong. None of the things he pointed out was he wrong about. Mm-hmm. But he never focused on any of the good, and he did nothing to encourage better performance. The only thing he did to encourage better performance is ridicule something he didn't like.
Well, Lester sides with you, saying, "Yeesh, I remember having the mumps too."
Anyway, that's my story. I say all this as someone who has been a teacher, right? I think it's important to point out that he was right. He did not steer me wrong, but he was not in my assessment, a good teacher, because he also did not encourage me to do anything other than try to avoid ridicule.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that actually reminds me of something.
Now I will erase this piece of sketch.
I still do a little bit of freelance editing and stuff on the side, primarily with my good friend Lester Smith, but also with other people and other organizations on occasion. One of the things I'm working on right now, I'm editing a small RPG from designer who's a friend of Lester and of mine. He's James Pearson,
Mhm.
uh, Pearson. You can find his work at jamesthegeek.com. He had in the past designed a couple of things for one of Lester's role playing games. And before I forget, you can find all of Lester's stuff at lestersmith.com, or you can go on Drive Through RPG and search Lester Smith Games. But back about James Pearson. I previously worked with him on a full fledged RPG that uses Lester's D6 by D6 game. This role playing game was. Oh, thank you for putting that up
Is
there,
it
Stan.
Pearson, P-I-E?
Like a pear, Pearson. But his website is just
Right.
jamesthegeek.com. That's in the same. Yes, James. Yeah, pear son, pear like the fruit,
Got it.
and son. First full-fledged thing he did was role-playing game paying homage to the EC horror comics and so forth.
Mm.
The Creepshow movie that was called Tales from the Terror Tomb.
Oh, nice.
What I'm working on another project with James right now, the Slashers versus Evil role playing game, where your slashers, serial killers from the campy 80s, slasher horror movie subgenre, but you're all working together fighting greater evils. And I recently, what prompted all this was you were talking about that teacher being mean. A few days ago, James and I were exchanging emails over my first turnover of edited material back to him. And again, the two of us having worked together before, I told him, look over my notes. Most of them are pretty small. There's one area I want you to look at, but it's this section right here. Otherwise, it's small stuff. Don't fret about it. Just start thinking about what you want to do with the questions I ask and so forth. He replies to me later on after he's had a chance to look at some of my comments and says to me, "Wow, you were really nice this time." Which of course prompted me to reply, "Was I mean last time?" If you want me to, I can be meaner.
I've certainly had situations where I've made notes thinking that they were not for the end user, they were just for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
them having been passed along to the end user as is, and knowing that I really phrase things much more bluntly than I would if I knew that that person was standing in front of me.
Lester
oh my God,
says,
this again? What, are you kidding me?
Yes, really. Lester says, Pearson's stuff is awesome. Lots of fun. A real knack for quirky horror. David Shepard must have gone to James's website. Says, Killer Fish, the role-playing game? To which Lester replies, "Yep, Killer Fish was one of James's first products." And so so apparently I'm being nice to James this time, which of course I can now change. But no, he is a talented designer, and Tales from the Terror Tomb was a great game, but he's a better designer now. So I don't have to be as mean.
All right, I'm gonna get out of here. So yeah, I'm going to keep working on this. If you want to see the finished version of this as soon as it's done, then you want to subscribe to the newsletter, 50 years in the dungeon.substack.com. Because that's where it will show up first. And then a few weeks later, I'll release it to the rest of the world, probably somewhere in late October. But if you want to see it sooner than that, there you go. That's your inside ticket. Dale, it has been a marvelously fun time hanging out and chatting with you. Thank you for squandering the better part of your evening with me.
Time spent with you is never squandered, my friend.
Thank you to everyone that showed up in the chat. And thank you, Dale, for serving as the chat intermediary for me while I had my head down the whole time.
Yeah. Well, that's what you pay me for, Stan. So,
So I don't pay near enough / anything.
I like to think I give a level commensurate with my remediation.
I like to think of it as your public service.
Yeah, no, I am happy to serve. As I've told you many times before. This is
do you have anything going? Oh, we've given a link to Lester's stuff and a link to that. Anything else you want to promote while you're here that I can give some quality airtime to?
Yeah, well, there's one other thing. I think I mentioned it the last time you and I were on together. Was I did some editing on the not yet fully released role-playing game of the Planet of the Apes from Magnetic Press Play Corporate Company. It's the Kickstarter is closed for that, but the crowdfunding is closed for that, but there is a backer kit URL that I just sent you, Stan, that is still accepting pre-orders.
There you go. Link now in chat for that.
Thank you very much for doing that. Yes, I did some editing on the core book for that, which you might well be heartened to know uses West End's D6 system as its engine.
West End, you know what? I wish I had something to do with that. It's an awesome system. I mean, I'm glad I got to be a part of it, but I can't claim any small piece of that puzzle that I added.
Well, I just know due to your past association with West End and my deep and abiding love for that system, which many people were first exposed to through West End's Star Wars RPG. And that's not where it originated, but that was where it really became known as one of the best RPG systems ever.
It started for Ghostbusters, right? That came out,
which was done by, if I remember correctly, it was the Ghostbusters was the first product that came in, but I want to say that was actually done done by some Chaosium people of the era.
Yeah,
I want to say. But yeah, Ghostbusters was the first West End product that system appeared in, and it was, of course, perfect for the light, airy tone of the Ghostbusters game. And one of the reasons I was so happy to have been involved in this is not only was it Planet of the Apes, but those Planet of the Apes movies were I'm sure were on Family Classics with Fraser Thomas at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Costikian, yes, it was Costikian.
Costikian, thank you. Yes, I wasn't sure if it was him or not. I didn't want to say that for sure. And Eric Goldberg, yes.
Thank you, Lester. So, Dale, are you going to be at GameholeCon in a couple of weeks?
not in an official capacity. I'm not a guest. I'm not appearing on panels or anything like that. But it is my intention to drive up on Saturday and spend the day seeing as many old friends as possible.
Well, I will be there. That's my plan. So and I'm a guest apparently. Well, not
Very
apparently.
nice.
I'm a guest. I'm running a few games on Friday and Saturday, and or Thursday and Friday. Thursday evening. I'm part of the uh, comedians and catacombs, or catacombs and comedians. I think it's catacombs and comedians. They do live live play comedy stuff, and I will be in the Thursday night group for them.
Yeah, Gamehole has a large contingent of former TSR personnel.
Hmm.
So I was just last night chatting online with our mutual friend Rich Baker about our fantasy baseball league and him winning it this year. But I'm not bitter. Um, and he was also commenting on the fact that he's going to be at Gamehole in a couple of
No,
weeks. So,
and by Lester's very subtle typing there, I'm guessing he's going to be there too.
oh my goodness!
This is going to be
Apparently,
great.
that's going to be the place to be
Gamehole Con, October 16th through 19th, in Madison, Wisconsin.
at the Alliant Energy Center, if I remember correctly, because I had to look up the directions on how to drive there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know Madison, that well.
Right.
Uh, Also, I don't know if I'll see you there, but if you get an opportunity to go out for a dinner, perhaps with people who might know the Madison area. Otherwise, you just Google Maps it. Uh, if you like Jamaican food,
Yeah.
David's restaurant, David's Jamaican food, whatever it's called, it's David's. Uh,
David's.
David's.
David.
Yep. David.
David's. David. David Jamaican. Got it.
Yes. A religious experience.
Mm. That's very high praise indeed.
Yes.
All right. So I will be back tomorrow. You know what? I was going to take you off screen and do an outro, but I'll just do it with you here. What? What?
Woo!
What? I'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Random Encounters, which Dale mentioned earlier. Thank you very much. The
Mhm.
improv cartooning show. On Friday night, turns out I just found out I will be a guest on the live stream for Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, the page. They've got a Friday night live stream, and they asked me if I'd be on that show. I will be at that convention in January too. I think you're going to be there, aren't you, Dale?
I do not currently have plans to do
Nope.
that.
Were you
The
there last
timing.
year?
I was supposed to be, but then something came up and I
Oh,
was unable to attend, for which I feel really bad about. Thanks, Dan.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for giving me this whole evening. I'm going to ruin the last 5 minutes of it for you.
No, no, I something came up at the last minute. I couldn't attend,
Right.
but I met the primary organizer, Ron, at
Right.
EggCon this
Yeah.
summer. It, where I profusely apologized, and he was magnanimous and let me off the hook.
Oh, good. Well,
So
hopefully get you out there. If not this year, then the next year, because I hear great things about it. I'm very, very much looking forward to going.
yes, it's very rapidly becoming a destination convention on
It
this year.
sounds very similar to Gamehole Con in that they they put a lot of effort in to bring a bunch of people from the industry so that the attendee to guest ratio is high. Everyone should get chances to interact with the people that they know, whose work they know, um,
Mhm.
and they care a lot about putting. And they got a lot of good, smart people putting together the show. So I've got high
Yeah,
hope.
yeah. Ron has been organizing conventions since the 90s. So,
Yeah.
yeah, an excellent staff they have there, including our friend Ed Stark, who's
Yeah. All right. So thank you all for coming in. Dale, thank you for coming in. I will be back tomorrow here on this same channel, and hopefully we won't have the internet bugs that we had tonight.
thank
Uh,
you for having me, Stan, and thank you to everyone who came in and listened to me talk endlessly.
good night, everybody.
Good night, Stan.